If you've been following my channel, you've seen me do this before. It's a banana bowl. It's named that because of its shape. It often gets a lot of comments. People wonder how you can turn something this shape on the lathe. Stay tuned to see how that's done. And this week is also a special project because it's a birthday present for a friend of mine. Happy birthday, Jerry. I didn't show it, but I've already mounted the log in my lathe. I turned a tenon between centers, and now that's mounted in my chuck. You can see here when I stopped it at the very beginning there, I am getting a bit of tear out, and it's on one edge, and it tends to be on the trailing edge as it comes around. That will tear out. Because of this, I'm not able to keep the bark on, and it still is going to be a live edge, but not a natural edge. There will be no bark. It is a log spinning around, as you can see, and I'm only making contact when it comes around twice per rotation. So what you need to do is you need to turn this as fast as you can. In this case, I've started out at about 600 RPM because it is a bit out of balance. Later on, I'll speed it up even more. I found this wood on the side of the road. It's a pile of wood with a sign on it, free, which is just the kind of wood that I'm usually looking for. It is some sort of fruit tree. I'm not sure what. It is a hardwood, but it's relatively soft, and it does cut fairly easily. I've got the outside pretty well shaped, and now I'm just starting to establish the rim on the inside. Again, because of the non-continuous rim, it is a little more difficult to get that established. I like to use my carbide tool and plunge it straight in as opposed to my gouge, just until I get that rim established. You can notice here, I just reached over and increased the speed on my lathe. I do have a variable speed, so that's as simple as increasing the dial. I want to turn this again as fast as I absolutely can. That will minimize that tear out that we saw at the beginning and make for a much smoother cut. Now I'm using my bowl gouge, now that I have the edge established a little bit more and I can ride my bevel. The bowl gouge, as usual, works much better than my carbide tool does. You can see now, and this is one of the fun things about turning this project, you can see right through the center because of the way the bowl is made and that it's non-continuous. You get the ghosting pattern, and I can still see right into the center. That does make it a bit easier to determine the thickness because I can see the thickness on the inside of the bowl at all times. With this type of a bowl, I try and keep my tailstock engaged as long as possible, probably a lot longer than I normally would turning a bowl. Again, just because of the shape and the fact that I'm turning it so fast, I like to keep that tailstock engaged absolutely as long as possible. One thing that you do have to be careful of, notice my arm here, my left arm. I have to make sure that I keep that on the tool rest. It is easy to forget, but if that were to slide over that tool rest, it would get hit by the piece coming around, and that would not feel good. Here I'm just whittling down that center piece to the point that I can break it off just by hand. Now I'll start sanding. I've got a flapper wheel, and I'll start sanding the edges, sanding the bark off. Again, because some of it tore off in the beginning, so I can't really keep it. Once some of it tears off, I'm committed pretty well to taking it all off. It still leaves you with a natural edge, but not a live edge. You can see here some of that tear out that I have to deal with, but it sands down and blends in with the rest of the edge just the same as the rest of it. Now, I'm ready to sand this, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is the most scariest thing I do on the lathe. And it shouldn't be. I mean, it's safe, so don't get me wrong. It's wood though. And I'm going to sand it, but because of the shape, I sand here, or here. I sand here, and then nothing to go all the way around here again. So if I were to do that very slowly, I would be able to move just a little bit of movement, not a lot, but I'm exaggerating, a little bit of movement. I would end up, when that came back around, it would catch. So this is where the nerve-wracking part comes in, not scary, nerve-wracking. In order to eliminate the possibility of movement and catching, I'm going to speed it up. And I'm going to go as fast as I can. There you go. The other thing about that, and that's often the case when I'm sanding, I always try and stand out of the line of fire. If this were to come apart, it's going to come this way and that way. So standing here is a wrong spot to be, but I don't really have much of a choice. It's pretty smooth there now. I've got a little bit of a ripple here I'll take out, and then I can finish it by hand. I didn't want to shape it by hand because I didn't want to change the shape. But now that I've got it pretty smooth, I can go over it just by hand and smooth it up. And again, I won't be changing the shape of it at all. I do have a little crack here. I may put some CA glue in it now. Again, just for safety purposes. And another one here. But pretty pleased with the way that's turned out. Now you do notice, maybe you noticed, but the sandpaper come off there at one point. The reason it did is I want to tip my sandpaper so it's like this, so that as this does come around, it's going to hit the bottom of the sandpaper, as opposed to this, which if I tipped it this way, it would just knock it off. So I want to make sure that I'm tipped so that the bottom edge is pushing into it. Sanding is finished now, and I'm applying my go-to finish for this type of a bowl. Because I can't do a friction polish because I don't want to rub anything on there, I'm going to apply tung oil. And that's something that can be applied either on or off the lathe. I just put as much on as it will hold, let it soak in, and then add some more once that's settled. Buff it in between, and then it's good to go. When it comes to mounting your bowls in your chuck, you have some options. My preferred option is to turn a tenon, and you can see that here on the bottom of this bowl. The tenon is what goes inside the chuck. When you're done, you need to remove that. It doesn't look very good. So the way that I normally do it is, you can actually see here I've got a block of wood in my chuck, and I've got a piece of anti-slip cloth over that. And then I had the center marked from earlier on. I just bring my tailstock up to that center point and just use a friction drive by pushing it in on my tailstock so that it will spin. And then I just make very light cuts, because it wouldn't take a lot to knock it off of there, but yet it's solid enough that I can make light cuts and remove that tenon. And that's what I'm doing here now. At the very end, I may have a very small nub where my tailstock has made a small indent, but that can just be sanded off. So here's the finished product. I think it turned out very well. I really like the overall shape of it. Here you can see I actually was able to keep a small branch that was sticking out from the original tree. Here's a side view. You can really see the overall shape, and another overhead shot showing that small branch that was sticking out. I hope Jerry enjoys this, and I hope you enjoyed the video as well.